After my last video went viral with hundreds of comments, sellers came out of the woodwork with stories that would literally make your jaw drop. So today I am sharing your real stories and what every seller needs to know before they say yes to the wrong thing. So pull up your chair, grab your favorite cup of coffee or drink, and let's get started. Let's talk about something that does not get said out loud enough. Not all real estate agents have your best interests at heart. I know, you might be surprised by that, but you might not. And yes, unfortunately, some do take advantage of sellers and buyers who don't know the game. Here, Carl commented, any bonus for agents taking advantage. And another viewer shared how they felt pressured to sign a buyer agency agreement with somebody they had just met. You should never feel pressured to sign anything on the spot. If your gut is telling you don't do it, absolutely follow your gut and do not do it. Now let's talk about dual agency. That is where the agent represents both the buyer and the seller in the transaction. In some states, it's legal. In Florida, it is not. So in Florida, we call it a transaction broker. It sounds neutral, but let's be honest, it is super confusing and oftentimes the lines get very blurry. Imagine it's like playing chess with somebody who is also helping your opponent. You deserve your own representation, somebody who is working just for you, not someone who is trying to split their loyalty. Look, I'm in the business. I know the pressure that sellers feel to just pick somebody and get the property listed on the market as fast as possible. But the agent you choose controls your price, your timeline, your strategy, and your stress level. Slow it down. Interview 2 to 3 agents. And here are some important questions I definitely think you should ask. How many homes have you sold in the last year? How many homes have you sold in this price point? How many homes have you sold in the last year in this price point and this type of home or neighborhood? How long have you been in the business? What is the compensation going to be and what is your marketing? Now that's just a few of the questions. If you want more, let me know. I've got a whole list of questions that you should be asking your agent. And most importantly, you want to ask, will you be working for just me or will you be working for both sides? Now, many times when I'm listing a property, a buyer does come along and they say, I only want to work with the listing agent. I always check with my seller first if that's something that they want or don't want. If they want it, I will do it. I'd prefer not to. I'd rather bring somebody in my office and they represent that side. But if that's really what they want, I will do that. Now, I follow my seller's instructions first because that is who I have signed a contract to work with. And if they say no, then I tell the buyer that we'll have to find them another agent for them to work with, but it could still be somebody in the office or anyone that they pick. Now, at the beginning of the process, if you're feeling uneasy about an agent, just go ahead and drop them. Move on, find somebody else. But if you're in the middle of a listing, it's probably not going to be as easy to drop them. So you're going to want to read that fine print in there that talks about how do you terminate a relationship and what does that look like and how much is it going to cost you? Because yes, there are many times fees in there for reimbursement of time and marketing cost. As in any business, we do have bad agents, but we also have some really, really great agents that always put the client's interests first. I am one of them, and I can show you exactly how not to get steamrolled in a transaction. Now, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood phrases in real estate, and that is as is. You would think it means what it says, that the home is being sold exactly as it is. No repairs, no credits, no fixes, right? Well, not everyone sees it the same way. So here Joe shares his example that once he was under contract, the buyer asked for $5,000 in repair credits. Now pause for a moment. There was no foundation issues. There were no roof leaks. This was just a buyer trying to squeeze a little bit more money out of the seller after they had already agreed. So why does this happen? Because some buyers and their agents feel that once they've got a seller under contract, that they're going to cave to pressure because they're already there and they just want to get the deal done. It's emotional, it's stressful, and if you don't know your rights, you might agree to something you shouldn't. But here's how you handle it. If your contract truly is as is, remind your agent and the buyer that the home was priced for its current condition. And if they want to walk, let them. A strong listing agent is going to back you up. And if the home was priced correctly, there will be another offer around the corner. Now let's talk about the real situation because there's always another side. If during the inspection period, the inspection report brings up something that nobody could have known and it wasn't visible to the naked eye when the buyer was walking through the property and made an offer, you're probably going to want to renegotiate. So, for example, you just recently had a buyer and when they were going through the property, everything was fantastic. Absolutely gorgeous. made an offer on it, no issues. During the inspection period, found out that there are raccoons in the attic. There was no way that they knew that there were raccoons in the attic when they were doing their first showing of the property. Got some estimates and found out that it was going to cost $10,000 to get the raccoons out of the attic, pull out all the insulation, sterilize, put the insulation back, and then make sure that the raccoons could not get back in. Now, the seller had a choice. The seller could say, you know what? No, walk away, take it or leave it. But the truth of the matter is, if that buyer did walk away, the seller was going to either need to disclose to the next buyer there's raccoons in the attic and probably not get anybody who wants to buy the property, or go ahead and fix the property, incur that $10,000 cost, and maybe still not get a buyer. In this situation, the seller made the decision to go ahead and credit the buyer the $10,000 so that they could move forward with the sale. So there is absolutely a time in an as-is contract that you're going to say, no, it's price for condition, and we're going to move forward as is. You saw it when you made the offer, but then there are going to be those rare times in which something comes up nobody would have known about, and I would suggest at that time you'll want to handle it, because you will, one way or another. All right, sellers, let's talk about a topic that was surprisingly divisive. I had no idea how many people were going to comment on this, and that is kids, pets, and privacy. If you've sold a home and you've experienced this, then you can understand why they are taking a hard no. George Kennedy comments, no kids, no pets, this is not a playhouse. And honestly, he's not wrong. And another viewer commented that after the open house, they felt that the free-for-all had gone on. During open houses, I have seen kids running around unsupervised, people are going through cabinets and drawers, and people often think that it's okay to bring their pet. Not their service animal or an emotional support animal, but their pet. So here's the deal I tell all sellers. When you're selling your home, it's still your home. It is not a daycare, it is not a zoo, and it's not a self-guided tour of IKEA. As a listing agent, I never recommend doing an open house. Now, I will cover that in another video because that is a hot topic, so be sure to watch for it. But if a seller wants an open house, I will agree to it as long as we set some boundaries and expectations in advance. One of them is no food or drinks, no water, nothing. Because people have a tendency to spill water, and even if it's just water, it can still cause damage. And they also leave their empty water bottles and their caps everywhere. And if you're serving food, you find that in the most disgusting places. Also, absolutely no animals unless it's a service animal. When people come to open houses with children, we let them know that their children do need to stay with them and be supervised at all times. Also, we want to make sure that there are no unaccompanied buyers. We want someone always with a buyer in every single room. So sometimes we will have to hold people back just so that we can make sure that we are guiding the buyers through the property and that there's no buyer in a random room by themselves off to the side. That's where problems occur. And absolutely no video recording and no photos. Now, why do I insist on these? Because it's about protecting your privacy, your property, and your peace of mind. I have seen way too many sellers walk back into a home and feel like strangers have ransacked it. Nothing was damaged, but things just felt off, and that is so stressful. Let's talk about two things that will tank the sale of your house faster than anything else, and that is overpricing it and hiding conditions. So this comment from DB nailed it. You feel like the house is already overpriced, and when you get in there and you find that there are issues like foundation and age of roof, it doesn't make you want to stay. You start wondering, like, what else did they not tell you? And when you overprice a house, what happens? It sits and sits and sits. And then people start talking about it and wonder what's wrong, start making up crazy things in their mind that probably don't even exist. And when you don't disclose, what ends up happening is they find it out during the inspection, and then you have to go through renegotiations. Or they cancel the contract, or worse, they end up suing you. So I've currently got a situation going on right now where I have a buyer who's interested in a property. I called the listing agent and I asked for the seller's disclosures. The listing agent said the seller will not complete the seller's disclosures until the buyer has made an offer and has been accepted. And I was talking to the buyers and I was like, okay, so we're going to drive an hour each way to go see a property, not know anything about its condition, probably find out that there are problems when we get there, and you're not going to like the price or the condition, and it's just a waste of time for everybody. It also had the buyer feeling like there's something wrong with this house, and that's why they don't want to fill out the disclosures, because they don't want us to know before we get there. So under disclosing, you know what, I wouldn't do it because they're going to find out anyway. I have seen way too many lawsuits in which buyers do sue the seller because they find out something after closing that they should have known, and they're in court. Buyers today are savvy, and many of them, rightfully so, are scared. So they're bringing their inspectors, they're bringing their contractors. They are going to find out. They're doing their homework online, and they're also talking to the neighbors. So here's my advice as a listing agent. Disclose, disclose, disclose. Whatever the wart or the bump or the ugliness of the house, make it up front so that everybody who comes in and sees it knows right off the bat what the issue is, and the fact that they're still showing up, it hasn't scared them. But when you hide it and then people show up and they go, wow, I wish I had known that, then they're not going to make an offer. That just wastes your time and it wastes their time. If there's anything that you can fix, go ahead and fix it beforehand. And if you can't, just put it on the paperwork that you're selling it at the right price for its current condition. After that last video, Grant reached out to me, and he has a property in Dania Beach, Florida. And so he told me that the backyard, the pool where it's at, the pool has kind of collapsed. And he was like, well, what do I do? It's like, well, you can't hide the fact that the pool has collapsed in the backyard. And so we came up with a strategy for him to just fully disclose it, make it one of the prominent pictures so that people know going into it, this is what the pool looks like and this is what you're going to deal with, but this is also why it is priced the way that it is. Because hey, there are many people out there who love a good deal. All right, I'm going to say something that's going to ruffle a lot of feathers. Your cousin that just got their license, your sister's friend who does real estate on the side, your neighbor's kid who sold their own house once, they might not be the best choice for one of your biggest financial decisions. Now, this commenter got 8 likes for a good reason. Your personal relationships and your family relationships, they are so much more important than any one transaction. Mixing business and personal relationships can cause all kinds of problems. Now, when I give this advice, I'm coming from a real place. When my father-in-law decided that he was going to move to Gainesville, Florida, he wanted to use me as a real estate agent. And I said no. I instead went to a very good friend who had experience in what he was looking for, and I asked them and said, I need for you to represent my father-in-law in the transaction. I just want to be a normal person and a fly on the wall, and I do not want to be part of the process. It was very smooth for me because I didn't have to give advice, and at Thanksgiving, nobody said, pass the gravy, you awful, terrible person. I am the favorite daughter-in-law. I want to remain the favorite daughter-in-law. Even though I am the only daughter-in-law, I still want to remain the favorite daughter-in-law. And our relationship was not worth this one transaction. As a full-time broker who has cleaned up lots of messes, here's what I can tell you. If you've hired a family member or a friend or the neighbor's child's son, and you're not getting showings, you're not getting aggressive marketing, and they can't guide you through handling offers, this is not loyalty, this is costly. So I am curious to know, have you ever hired someone close to you and then regretted it? If you have, tell me in the comments. I would love to hear. Let's talk about something now that can completely derail your sale, and that is contingencies. Now, Jackie's wild story, that is actually one that we see way too often. And let me tell you, an inexperienced agent is going to cost you on this one. It is not an uncommon request or condition that a buyer need to sell a home in order to purchase another home. And I get it. You want to do what we call a simultaneous close. The buyer is closing on the house that they have to sell in order to buy this house on the same day so that they're not going to be homeless for a night or a week or even a month. But you as a seller, you actually want to know this. So whenever a buyer makes an offer, just because they don't say they have a house to sell doesn't mean that they don't have a house to sell. So your agent wants to ask the question, are you renting or do you own? If they say we're renting, well, when does your lease end? Because they may have to break their lease and pay a fee. If they own a house, you want to know, do you have to sell that house in order to buy this one, or can you swing 2 mortgage payments? Because if they cannot swing 2 mortgage payments, then you want to know what Jacqueline knew, which is you have to sell that house. Is it on the market and is it under contract? You also want to know when is it closing and how strong is the buyer for that property to ensure that deal is going to go through. Why so many questions? And why is this even important to you? Because that buyer's financing can fall through, making it so that that house doesn't get sold and that buyer cannot buy your house. This can cause the sale of your property to drag on and on as they're like, well, we'll get it under contract again, and then we'll be able to buy your house. And as a seller, you're missing valuable time on market. So if you're not going to say no to that contingency, that's fine. Just be informed. When I walk sellers through offers from buyers, especially if it's in a multiple offer situation, we don't just look at the dollars, we look at the certainty. You want to make sure the buyer is pre-approved. Do they have to sell a house or can they swing 2 mortgages? If they have to sell a house, is it under contract? I mean, heck, is it even listed for sale? And if it is it under contract? When is it closing? And is the buyer of that property strong enough to make sure it closes on time? Because sometimes a lower offer without contingencies is better than a much higher offer with a lot of contingencies. And taking your house off the market for 90 days, that's kind of scary. Sellers, don't get starry-eyed about the offer price. Make sure you know what you're agreeing to. This comment, I almost died over. I was choking on my water, spit it out through my nose because this comment is one that I absolutely never agree with. Try it out as an Airbnb and kick the tires first. I get it, but I would never recommend as a seller that you do this. Sure, on the buyer side, it's creative. It's not a bad idea. You get to experience the area and the home to make sure that you know what you like. But from the seller side, things can go way wrong. Once you put someone into your home and they are not the owner, then you are now into tenant law. And tenants, they have a lot of protections. What if they decide they don't want to leave? Do you know the laws in your area on how long it is to evict somebody that is in the home? While they're in there, they could be changing things or doing damage. Suddenly they find a laundry list of things that are wrong outside of the inspection period, and now they're asking for discounts. And worse, if they don't get the discounts, they're going to cancel the contract and just leave. Now, I'm not against creative solutions. If this is truly an Airbnb property and they want to actually rent it from you as an Airbnb property so that they can decide if they want to buy it for investment purposes or move into it themselves, that is one thing. But if this is listed as your home, then no. The answer is just no. But if you're going to choose not to listen to me, then absolutely contact your attorney first and find out what you need to know before you move forward with that decision. Okay, so this next one actually has me shaking my head and laughing a little too, because this one is more common than you think. Karen shares with us how after she closed her property, 3 months later, the seller comes back and wants thousands of dollars for the porch that he built. No, that became Karen's on the day of closing. So if you don't already know, on the day of closing, you own it, whether you want to or not. And what I mean by that is, what I normally see is that sellers will accidentally leave something at the property. I have one case where the sellers left an attic full of Christmas decorations. And the buyers came in moving day and they were like, I don't know what to do with all this stuff. Like, they obviously didn't want it. They left it behind. We had no way to get a hold of the sellers, so the buyers threw it out. That was their right to do so. Sellers contacted them a month later and was like, hey, we left our Christmas decorations in the attic. Can we go by and pick them up? And they were like, they're not here anymore. So whatever is in the property on the day of closing belongs to the new owner unless there's already been something pre-negotiated. Now, of course, I've got a story for that one too. In this situation, I represented the seller and it was a farm. She had horses and cows on that farm. And she was running a little bit behind on packing everything up. On the day of closing, she tells me right when we're sitting down at the table is she hasn't moved the cows or the horses off the farm. And so now we're having to do an addendum to the contract that within a week, she is going to remove the horses and cows off the property. And we had to put money into escrow in case she didn't remove them, because then the buyers are going to be responsible for the cost of getting those animals off the property. And we even had to put in there that if the animals died while they were at the property waiting for her, it was not going to be the buyer's responsibility because they did not know how to care for cows and horses. Now, have you ever been in a situation where either you left something at the property or you closed on the house as a buyer and there were things there that you were not expecting? Let me know in the comments. So here's one where the commenter thought that by selling to a realtor, things were going to be much easier. Because, they know the contracts, they know the rules. It's going to be easy, right? No, not always, because not all real estate agents are created equal or even good. So even in this situation where the buyer is a realtor, you got to remember they're still human too. Doesn't mean that they have a lot of experience or any experience. But the great thing is our commenter had a very, very strong agent who knew what they were doing and kept the deal together and in their best interest. It's not uncommon that buyers, even real estate agents as buyers, they're going to push the limits. Now in Florida, it is important that you know it is required that a real estate agent disclose that they are a licensed real estate agent, whether they are actively working in the business or they are inactive in the business, so that you as a consumer know that you are dealing with somebody who has additional education that is probably going to be used against you. So it wouldn't hurt to ask on the other side, hey, do you happen to have a real estate license? You might be shocked that many of them do. Now, Mark here has brought something up that happens way too often. And we discussed working with your friends earlier. So you got that real estate friend, they just got their license, and of course you want to support them because you're a really good person. So you list your house with them, or you say, you know what, you can help me find a house. I mean, what could go wrong, right? A lot actually, but you already know that. That's why you're here. Often what we see with new realtors is they have no experience, no education, no reputation, and no relationships in the business. And like anything else, it is who you know, and your reputation matters. So if you've got somebody who's brand new in the business, nobody knows anything about them, we're a little nervous to work with that person because we don't know if they're going to butcher the deal or if they're going to get the deal to go forward. But when you're working with a seasoned person and that person's got a reputation of like, yeah, that person, they're going to get the deal done and it's going to be a smooth deal for everybody. Agents' reputations will either get the phone answered or not answered. So just the other day, one of my newer agents came to me and they said, hey, I've been trying to reach this agent and they have not called me back in 2 weeks. My person is getting very frustrated. And I was thinking, oh my gosh, why did it take 2 weeks? I mean, like you should have come to me sooner. So I asked them who they were working with and I knew automatically that this person did not really return phone calls, which they should, but they didn't return phone calls to newer agents because they just felt like they were wasting their time, which is not okay, but that's what happens. And so I quickly just sent a text, said, hey, it's Tammy. My agent is asking about this, 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 and this. Can you get us some information? And within 30 seconds, they responded. And my agent's looking at me like, oh my gosh. And I was like, your reputation matters. Your education and how they see you matter. And they're either going to respond to you or they're not going to respond to you. So an agent having a good reputation, meeting all the other agents that are out there and building their experience and their brand is very important. Mark is right. Real estate is a relationship business and agents do talk behind the scenes. We know who returns calls, who is smooth to work with, and who is a troublemaker. If you selected an agent who isn't well known or isn't respected, you might end up losing. So remember, this is possibly your biggest financial decision. You need someone who is proven, prepared, and ready to fight for you, not someone who's just getting started. So if you are buying or selling real estate, do not gamble on relationships. Hire for results. If you want to know more, click the link in the description below. Let's set up a time to talk and I'll be happy to go over it with you. Okay, this commenter shared one of the most frustrating things I see happen to sellers. Get an offer, the numbers work, you get under contract, you're so excited, but then things start to change. In this situation, the buyer had to sell their house in order to buy this home. Everything's good, right? Except for they ended up having to sell their house for less than they wanted to because that buyer or situation changed. So they go to the seller and they're like, hey, guess what? I didn't make as much money as I needed to. I need for you to help us. And I see this way too often where the buyer is like, well, the seller got a good deal when they bought it. It's not the seller's responsibility to pass off a good deal at the right time and finding it to the next person, because no buyer wants to pay for a bad deal either. Because remember when the market crashed and everyone was upside down, every buyer said, well, I'm not paying what you paid for the house. That is your problem. But it's always funny because now they're like, oh, well, the seller got a good deal, so we want them to pass that deal on. Or the buyer says, I'm getting a bad deal on the sale of my house, so seller, you can adjust this contract price so that I'm okay. No, the answer to that one's no. But in many situations, I understand that the sellers are also stuck because they may absolutely have to close, and then you're balancing like what is worse, walking away from the table because you're not going to make the reduction, or having to do some sort of concession just to make the deal go forward. So the hard truth in a situation like that is just because the buyer is able to close their deal doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to continue to be in the best position to close the deal on your house. So follow all the other recommendations I had earlier in the video on contingencies, and don't let somebody else's bad planning hijack you. The buyer's problems shouldn't become your problems. So this comment brings us back to the open house debate. Are they worth it, or are they just chaos? Almost all the commenters felt that open houses were absolutely not worth it. Let's talk about the pros of an open house. Many times people will see an open house sign and they'll say, oh, you know what, let's stop by and see what this open house is. And you might get foot traffic that you normally would not have had. If there are a lot of people in the home and they're talking favorably about it, it might create a sense of urgency for a buyer to be like, oh, you know what, they're loving this house, I better hurry up and make an offer. And there are many buyers out there that don't have an agent and aren't ready to work with an agent, but they will go to an open house to see the house because they don't want an agent to set the appointment for them. Now, I could only come up with 3, and I had to work very hard to come up with 3 positives. If you can think of any, drop them in the comments because I'm completely at a loss. So let's go over the negatives. You do not control who comes through your door. And remember earlier when I said one of the pros is that someone's going to see a sign and they're going to come in? Well, a lot of those people don't know what they're coming into. So when they come in, they make comments like, oh, I thought it was going to be bigger. They want how much for this house? So that's not going to help you at an open house. I also find that the nosy neighbor comes over and they make comments like, I was wondered how they lived. Oh my gosh, they did this, I wouldn't have done that. That is not helping the open house either. Another con is if you live in the house, you're going to spend time cleaning that house before you do it, and then you're going to end up cleaning that house after the open house as well. And of course, the security risk. Trying to manage that many people coming through an open house and making sure that nobody is ever alone in a room and touching anything. You don't want to feel like your house has been ransacked when you come home. So here's what I recommend. To me, the first open house is actually online. When they're looking at the photos and they're making a decision from the photos if they even want to see your house. Those people that want to see your house, serious buyers make an appointment. I have never had a serious buyer say to me, you know what, let's just wait to see that house until they have an open house. Might be 3 months from now, but we'll just go then. No, they're worried that the house is going to be gone, so they make an appointment when it's most convenient for them to get into that house. And the more they like your house, the more aggressive they are about seeing it as early as possible. I also recommend that buyers have pre-approval or proof of funds letters. It is a waste of time for them, the agents, and for you to have to leave your house if that person is not serious enough to make an appointment with a lender and get that letter, or they go, well, don't you know who I am? Why do I need to give you a pre-approval letter or a proof of funds? I'm so-and-so. I don't know who you are, and I know a lot of rich people who cannot afford to buy anything. So I'm going to need your letter. Also, an agent should be present. Buyers should never come to your house without an agent present. And you will not believe how many times I actually get that request where an agent will say, hey, can we just give them the code and they let themselves in? Absolutely not. If you can't show up and show them the property, then you need just to pass them on and let them work with somebody who's got the time for them. But buyers should never be in your home by themselves. Now, are you obligated to do an open house? You are not. A lot of people think that they should do open houses because it's going to create traffic, but I already told you the kind of traffic that you're going to get in the open house. It's not the best traffic. So why does your agent want you to do an open house? Well, I will tell you. That's because open houses can be a great lead source for new agents. Statistics show that it's about 7% of people will buy the house from seeing it at an open house. Those are not good odds. That other 93%, that is a great place for agents to get buyer leads because they do want to buy. They just decided they didn't want to buy your house because it wasn't the right house. So they will end up getting to move them to a different house that they could buy. I always tell my sellers that instead of an open house that might get 3, or let's go crazy, let's say 30 people that came through in a 4-hour period, I'd rather do social media and put the property in front of hundreds, if not thousands of eyeballs who are able to look at that property anytime they want. They can even share it with a friend, because I've never seen it in an open house where somebody shared an open house with a friend while they were there. Now they've called them and said, come by, and the person said, I was busy. But when it's online and they see it on social media, they start sending it to people and saying, hey, I know you're looking. I thought of you. You might like this house. Or they send it to a family member that's like, we should move here. So versus open houses, social media is where it's at. But you're the seller. You get to decide. My coffee is cold and I'm going to need to get a refill. So let me wrap this up with something that made my day. This viewer said that it was time to list their house in Polk County, that they would hire me. Now that is the kind of message that fuels everything I do. Many of you reached out to me just to talk about your situation and how I could best help you, and that's what I want to do. Selling your home does not need to be a battle. It doesn't need to be confusing, and it certainly does not need to be more overwhelming than it already is. And you do not have to do it alone. When you've got the right agent in your corner, somebody who has seen it all, fights for you, and knows how to protect your time, your money, and your sanity, selling your home becomes a whole lot easier. So if you're in Polk County, Florida, or anywhere in the United States, and you're thinking about selling in 2 months or 2 years, then click on the link in the description below or scan the QR code. Let's chat and build a smart plan together. Thanks, and I'll see you in the next video.